Hi, everyone. Thank you. Yeah, it's great to be here for a second year running. I was here for MGS 22, and it's wonderful to be back. Before I begin, I want to extend my gratitude to the Airbridge AB 180 team for inviting me back this year and for putting on such a very well organized event. It's really an honor and a pleasure to be speaking to you here today. So thank you, Roy, and the whole team for putting this event together. My talk today is about new market entry and growth for mobile apps and games. I'm going to provide some case studies from some well-known apps, including some that my company Phiture has helped to achieve growth. I have my slides in both Korean and English, so I'm going to try to remember to switch to the Korean version while I'm speaking. So, a little about me. I'm Andy Carvell. I'm originally from the UK, but living the last 12 years in Berlin, Germany. I started out as a games designer, game developer, creating embedded games for Nokia handsets back in 1999. I moved on from Nokia to work for some dedicated game studios in the UK, developing and publishing mobile games for around about 10 years. After studying for an MBA at Warwick Business School in the UK, I moved to Berlin and joined SoundCloud, a social music platform, to help them grow on mobile. And it was at SoundCloud that I learned a lot about data-driven marketing, and also where I met my friend and colleague Moritz. We both shared a passion for data-driven testing and growing mobile products. For around 12 months at SoundCloud, I was running a new markets team there, an experimental team designed to research and develop new markets for SoundCloud. And that's a lot of my experience from that is what I'm going to share today, plus experience since from the company that I set up with Moritz, which is called Phiture. Here's the game I'm probably best well known for back in my game development days. It's a game called Space Impact, and it was very popular around about the year 2000. It was one of the first arcade shoot-'em-up games to appear on a mobile phone. I had a lot of fun making it, and it was a great experience, a great exercise in optimization, since I had to squeeze the entire game into about 16 kilobytes. And I remain as excited about mobile as I was when I was making this game back in 1999. So, a little bit about Phiture. We're a mobile growth consultancy that works with B2C apps to help them develop and execute on a solid mobile growth strategy. We're a team of 160 experts with our headquarters in Berlin and teams in New York, Singapore, and London, as well as team members across Europe in hubs such as Barcelona and Lisbon. We work globally with some of the leading apps and as well as some exciting new apps with high potential. We typically work with their growth or marketing teams to help them become more data-driven about growth and to run growth experiments that drive measurable impact for their businesses. We tend to work as an extension of our client teams, someone they can rely on to help them execute or to build out the strategy for various parts of their growth efforts. We're partners with many of the top platforms in the ecosystem, including, of course, Airbridge, also Google, Apple, Braze, Amplitude, mParticle, and more. So growth is a connected system, and it's important that we can help our clients optimize across the whole funnel. We build from building a growth strategy to executing on specific areas such as organic and paid acquisition, through to increasing retention, engagement, and monetization. We also support our clients with tech and tools implementation, design, both graphic and motion design, localization in all markets, data analysis, data engineering, and all kinds of custom solutions, custom marketing automation and dashboarding solutions. And this is Phiture's mobile growth stack framework. I created the first version of this framework actually just as a way of explaining to the senior leadership team at SoundCloud what my job was all about, and essentially helping them to understand some of the levers for growth on mobile. The activities and channels that could form part of a mobile marketing strategy. I later published the framework as a blog post, and it was well received by growth practitioners around the industry. And it turned out to be very helpful for people planning their growth initiatives in both apps and games. One key thing to understand about this framework is that you don't have to do everything in the stack. I know it's very busy. It's got a lot of information in it. The idea is that like really gives you an overview of all of the activities that could form part of your mobile growth strategy. Strategy is all about focus. You'll likely cover more of the stack over time as your team and your app grows and you become bigger and have more resources. But you're never going to do everything here, and neither should you. It's really about helping you to choose and select the areas you want to invest in. And now, in the mobile growth stack, we have international. I've highlighted this in green, the areas that I'm going to kind of talk about today. We see that, if done right, international growth efforts are a multiplier for top-line user growth, retention, and revenue growth, which is why it's cutting through these three main areas of the stack. So, what do we actually mean by international expansion? Whether you're a Korean app trying to make it big in the US and Europe, what we would call a go west strategy, or let's say you're an American brand looking to grow in Asia or the Middle East, what we would call like a go east strategy. Here are some top-level pointers that I'm going to explain over the next few slides with some examples and case studies. Okay, so first thing, understand your target markets. Do some research, talk to local experts and local users as well. Localize your app and your marketing. I'll get to what I mean by that in a minute. Look for opportunities to leverage local partnerships and networks and influencers. And most importantly of all, expect the unexpected. When you're going to grow fast in international markets, you can hit roadblocks of all kinds. Not just roadblocks, by the way. You might actually experience hyper growth in markets that you just did not expect, and you weren't doing any marketing there. We saw that a lot at SoundCloud as well. I'll give you some examples in the next slides. As I mentioned, when I was at SoundCloud for about 4.5 years in the end, I was leading a few different teams during my time there. But one of them was an experimental new markets team. These days, SoundCloud is a client of Phiture. I'm going to actually start off by talking a little bit about my experience there. So I was there from 2012 to 2016. It was a very exciting time to be at a company like SoundCloud. I'm going to share a little bit about what I learned there, both in terms of executing on some of their strategy and helping to define new market strategy, as well as just sort of some of the things which helped them to grow and become a global brand and a global platform. So SoundCloud always set out to be a global platform. Even though they founded the company in Berlin, the founders were Swedish, not German, and they wanted to build something not just for the German market. They wanted SoundCloud to be for music and audio creators and listeners all over the world. And so from the very start, the product was built in English, which is a fairly internationally well-known language, right? It wasn't until around 2014 or so that they gave any consideration really about re-engineering the platform to support additional languages. This meant that there was a lot of back-end systems and front-end UI stuff that had been hard-coded for the English language. And it was a major project to translate that product into non-English languages, and that engineering effort actually took several years. While that was happening, my team at SoundCloud led the way by getting the Android app translated with the help of Google. And Google were actually investing a lot in their developer relations setup, and they wanted to make it very easy for Android developers to translate at platform level, like all of the text within their apps. And they made they even gave us some free credits to get translations done for free. So my team began to localize like the Android app into like key languages, as well as the App Store and Play Store listings. So localized ASO. We were targeting local language keywords. We translated the descriptions, the app title, and most importantly, the screenshots to make the app look more relevant for the local audiences in these countries. And we did all of this before the app itself and the platform itself was fully translated. And it drove a lot more installs. So SoundCloud also worked a lot with creator communities and influencers and musicians like all over the world to drive more local adoption. In the new markets team, which was an experimental team which I was leading to develop some new markets, we partnered with several famous DJs, music schools, and even like some children's brands that were uploading like songs for children, which were insanely popular, all in the Brazilian market. and we helped them to upload the content onto SoundCloud. We helped them to promote it to their audience. And that drove a lot of listening and a lot of like new users for SoundCloud. And it helped us to build that playbook for growing SoundCloud in new markets. And then in terms of unexpected stuff, expect the unexpected, we got banned in several countries for political reasons sometimes. Sometimes it was more like legal threats from particular digital rights collection organizations. SoundCloud was always kind of treading a very fine line between getting sued out of existence by the major record labels, which they eventually did deals with, but it was always touch and go. You know, as a user-generated content platform, which may or may not have had some pirated music on there from time to time, you know, it was sometimes sort of a dicey area to be working with. What we also saw in terms of like more positive, you know, unexpected stuff was hyper growth in Egypt. It was around the time the Arab Spring protests and sort of political change was happening in Egypt. You know, suddenly like SoundCloud adoption just went crazy. A lot of folks were putting up like political speeches and stuff on there, and yeah, also a lot of like Egyptian homegrown music. It just went absolutely nuts. And one technical hurdle, which we only understood after doing a lot of data analysis, was that there was a very high correlation between playback latency, specifically like time to playback of a track when you hit the play button. So the time that people had to wait from pressing play to hearing the music start. This was actually probably one of the biggest technical factors in our ability to grow in new markets. If there was high latency, which there was in some countries, then you know people wouldn't want to use SoundCloud, even no matter how much marketing or you know community outreach we would do. And that makes sense, right? If the product just isn't very satisfying, if the streaming quality is not reliable enough, you know, people weren't going to use it. And so we invested a lot in content delivery networks, like putting in extra nodes from like Akamai and stuff like this, in order to provide a better streaming service quality in many parts of the world. And that unlocked a lot more growth in those regions. So I want to talk a bit about TikTok now. So switching from SoundCloud to, yeah, hopefully most of you know TikTok. You know, this is a great case study in international growth, even though their success was fueled in a large part by a multi-billion-dollar ad spend. And so over a really prolonged period, over several years, they were pumping billions of dollars into Facebook ads, Instagram ads, stuff like this in order to grow adoption and awareness of TikTok. So not many apps can afford to do that. Not many apps are, you know, allegedly supported a lot by the Chinese government and given essentially unlimited funding. So, you know, you could say, well, it's not very useful case study to look at. But actually, despite these advantages that they had, paid user acquisition was not the only source of TikTok's international growth. So just a kind of quick history of TikTok. You know, they made several important acquisitions, ByteDance being the parent company. They bought Musical.ly and Flipagram before they actually launched TikTok. And they'd already launched their own Chinese social network, basically the TikTok equivalent for China, called Douyin. And they were able to leverage learning from some of the other apps in their portfolio, including a news app in China that had like some, you know, hundreds of millions or maybe even billions of users, which would really help them to refine their now legendary algorithm for, you know, accelerating virality of content by surfacing high potential content up into the users' feeds. They had a lot of, you know, capabilities which they were honing or refining and bringing together, either through acquisition or just through like having a lot of data to play with, before they really kind of brought that all together into the product that we now know as TikTok. And TikTok has also done incredibly well at courting and supporting influencers, providing a platform that they can thrive on, whilst tapping into their historical popularity on other networks. And finally, TikTok worked really hard to create the right flows to optimize virality. So more on this on the next slide here. So TikTok basically, you know, they have these viral sharing loops. These are fairly common in a lot of apps that have content. This is also a great boost for SoundCloud. Also was you know, it was also highly viral. If you have an app or a or a game where you have content that people might want to share with their friends, either one-to-one or to friends via a social network, so one-to-many shares. It's really worth investing in making those flows really smooth, optimizing them in terms of like helping to get people to share them to the destinations which are going to give you the most virality and give you the shortest cycle time to bring on new users into the platform and get a high K factor. It's very hard to manufacture virality like completely, but it's if you do notice that you have people that are willing to share stuff, then you want to make it as easy as possible for them, because it really can be a multiplier for your growth. So it wasn't all plain sailing for TikTok, for sure. As I mentioned earlier, when an app gets very popular, it starts to attract all kinds of attention. There can be unexpected consequences. In TikTok's case, it had problems in India. There's a lot of tension between India and China in terms of political relations, and this spilled over to TikTok. They got banned there. But also the USA and Europe have been giving TikTok a hard time lately around the amount of data that ByteDance is collecting there, and that the app is potentially shipping that data back to China. There's a lot of governments now looking at TikTok a little bit critically from a data protection point of view, and also worrying if there's maybe even kind of bigger issues at stake with the data which is being collected and shared. So moving on to a Korean success story of international growth, let's talk about PUBG for a minute. So a few tenets of the success of the PUBG franchise internationally includes making India the hub of its emerging market strategy and investing more than $100 million in the startup ecosystem in India. Launching a reworked Chinese version of the app, which they named Game for Peace, that boosted their revenue by 540% year over year. And they also did a lot with community, so organizing the PUBG Global Championship, World Championships, like all kinds of events all around the world where people would get together, created a lot of buzz around the game, and also really fostered like a high level of engagement and enthusiasm for PUBG all around the world with like very sort of fanatical players. But they also had some issues, particularly also with India. Actually, it's not that every app gets banned in India, but yeah, with PUBG they also had problems because they'd licensed so even though it's a Korean company, Krafton, who come up with the game, they actually got Tencent Games, Chinese company, to generate the mobile game to develop it. And that because Tencent's a Chinese company, this mobile app, which was crazy popular in India, eventually actually got banned there, and Krafton was able to actually kind of get around that in the end by creating a new version of the app specifically for India, not with Chinese developers. And then they of course had to like migrate people across, which is kind of what you see on the right there, is like they had to really try to migrate their existing user base over to the new app. So back to some best practice. I want to talk about like understanding target markets. Like, what does that actually mean? You could do worse than to look at your top performing apps and games in the category for each of your top markets, right? And learn from them what's working well in terms of seasonal promotions, local keywords that they're targeting in the app stores, adverts that they're running. So look at like not just like which channels are they spending a lot of money to advertise on, but also what do their creatives look like? What is the like visual style that's working? What are the benefits and USPs that they're pushing for their apps? It helps you to understand where your positioning can fit in. Also look at the partnerships that they're leveraging or the influencers that they're working with. And also make sure that you understand the regulatory landscape. So especially around privacy and data protection, but any other local laws that you need to comply with in order to to grow and ideally not get banned in a particular market. And also look at benchmarks ahead of time that can tell you what to expect in terms of cost per install. MMPs often have good data on this, so you can maybe check with Airbridge. I'm sure they have pretty good aggregated data on cost per install in various markets. And also like benchmarks like retention. Be a bit careful using benchmarks because they won't necessarily apply directly to your particular app or game, but they give you at least an indication of what you should be aiming for. Braze have a really good benchmark site called Braze Benchmarks, where you can get engagement and retention benchmarks on there. Just one small tip on local keyword trends. So one thing that you'll notice with when you're trying to target, like if you're doing research to look at like local keywords and what your competitors are targeting in terms of keywords, just be careful that you're not targeting, you're not looking at just like one particular month, where there might be local keywords which are like particularly important in a particular season or a particular time of year in a particular market. So look at how the keyword trends change over a year in a market if possible, because you might actually see that there are some seasonal keywords that you may well want to tap into, but you don't want to make those your global keywords for the whole year round. So in this case, in like places where there's hurricanes or bad weather apps will typically target like things like hurricane, but only in hurricane season maybe would they make that one of their top keywords to optimize for. Sorry, I forgot to change to the Korean slide there. Right, so just some more examples now. Getting towards the end of my presentation, I want to show you basically just a whole bunch of stuff which we've created at Phiture. First of all, just to wrap up the competitor analysis part, you can use tools like Mobile Action to see actually what when people are making keyword making App Store refreshes. You can see what seasonal refreshes your competitors are doing. I think it's like super important. Like, I'm not saying that you should copy what everyone else is doing, but it's good to, particularly when you're going into a new market, to see what your top competitors are doing in terms of App Store refreshes and as I said, seasonal campaigns and things like that. So this was a Black Friday update for Shine fashion app. I can't remember which market this was in, but like they kind of did a whole like refresh of their App Store for Black Friday, and you'll see this quite a lot with like big regional holidays. So tailor your approach. This is kind of the main message I want you to take away. If you take away anything from this talk today, it's like that you should not use a one-size-fits-all approach when trying to grow globally. You may well find that what you're doing in your core markets also works well automatically in some of the others, but there'll be certainly plenty of times when you need to take a locally relevant approach and adjust some or all of your marketing activities to match like the needs of that local market. So that would include things like App Store optimization, your user acquisition strategy, both in terms of creatives and your channels that you're using. It might be payments. You might need to support locally relevant payment methods. Promotions, which I already mentioned a little bit. Local partnerships. Also pricing, by the way. Like, you should not charge the same price for your subscription or for your in-app purchases all around the world. Apple and Google make it pretty easy to do locally adjusted pricing, and you should definitely think about what can people actually afford and what's going to be competitive in each market. Okay, so I said I'd finish off with some examples from some of Phiture's clients. We're working with Adobe. We're actually supporting them with local App Store optimization in, I think it's for 8 of Adobe's apps in 27 markets worldwide. So Phiture's really helping them to do international marketing on a pretty global level. And here's some of these are just examples of feature graphics from Adobe Lightroom in different countries around the world that we've produced for them for the Apple App Store. Now I want to give an example of some tests that we ran for Adobe Photoshop Express, because this is again an example of like this expect the unexpected, and a good lesson in the fact that you actually do need to do research and understand your local market and your local audience very carefully. So what we found here was, in this case, like this is the winner, this variant C. We found like a really interesting, we ran a few different refreshes of the App Store creatives for this app, Adobe Photoshop Express, in the Chinese App Store. And we were, trying to create like locally relevant screenshots that would appeal to a Chinese audience. And we weren't getting any wins, and we were really scratching our head, like trying to understand, like, why are we not getting, conversion increase? We've got these beautiful new screenshots that just not seem to be resonating with the audience. What we found out actually was that most of the people who were downloading Photoshop Express from the Chinese App Store, they were Chinese nationals, but they were not living in China. They were actually mostly students or professionals who were working outside of China, who wanted to download the Chinese version, but they were downloading from the Chinese App Store, but they were doing it from other places. And actually, we realized that they actually responded better when we incorporated some Western cultural some Western cultural influences into the screenshots, and then we saw an immediate uplift in conversion. Okay. Yeah, here's another example. This is another Adobe example from Adobe Express. Here we were able to increase downloads in Germany by creating a special custom product page, which we drove traffic to via, I think it was Apple Search Ads, with a more minimalist design aesthetic, which we'd seen from our research again. We'd seen actually from some of the competitor apps were doing very well with a kind of slightly more minimal visual style. So what we see there is up top is the older style. It's a bit more busy, a bit more colorful. We went with a slightly more minimal style with and tested that with a custom product page, and we got 32% increase in conversion. So it's good to understand that what people in your target audience in that local market are going to respond well to, and of course to run experiments and test it get some real data around it, because not everything you try is going to succeed. So we've got some holiday creatives here, just a selection of stuff that we produced for some of our clients. Adjusting App Store creatives and adverts for seasonal holidays on a local basis also generally performs well. Here's a selection from Lego, Burner, Adobe Lightroom, Norton, and a few others. The Norton one is quite subtle. This is like a Christmas decoration. It's a Christmas icon change. They just turned their icon into a little bauble that you would hang on a Christmas tree. So it's like, can be quite subtle stuff like that, but it generally makes a nice difference and a noticeable difference in conversion. Okay, I'm almost out of time, but I think we're pretty much at the end of the presentation. Can we? Yes, we can play this. Great. So it's celebrating Halloween for the Lego Life app in the Korean market. And there we go. Yeah, and it should go without saying that for all of the stuff that I talked about today, you need to measure the effectiveness of all of your marketing efforts, including localized marketing. Measurement partners such as Airbridge can be a great help there. They can help provide better visibility into what's working and what's the incremental contribution of App Store optimization and paid marketing efforts in each market. So thanks very much for your time today. This concludes my presentation. Here are some of the brands that Phiture works with to drive growth in many markets worldwide. And please feel free to add me on LinkedIn. We also have a booth out in the expo area. We'd love to have a chat with you if you want to come and talk about anything that I've presented today or just learn more about Phiture. Yes, you can do so. And thank you very much. 감사합니다.